Hello everybody, and welcome to this video. Today we will be taking apart this ATI Radeon HD 5870 graphics card, and we will be replacing the thermal paste on the GPU as well as replacing all the thermal pads on the VRAM and all that on the card. I've already done this on its pair because I have two of these cards. And just replacing the pads and a thermal paste has greatly reduced the amount of heat that is thrown out of the card while using it. So I figured I'd save this one to do a video of, since while I was in the middle of doing the other one, I figured this would make a good video. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to flip the card over so that we have access to the screws that hold on the back plate, and we'll remove the all the screws. I guess before we go into that, we should look at what tools and that you'll actually need to perform this. You'll need a screwdriver with two different size, a larger Phillips head and a smaller Phillips head, as there are two different size screws on the card. A flashlight is always handy. A pair of pliers is good to help disconnect the fan cable from the PCB when we get it done. Some alcohol wipes, some rubbing alcohol, some paper towels and napkins to wipe up the old thermal paste, a couple Q-tips to help clean off the VRAM when we get the thermal pads off. Of course, you're going to need some thermal paste itself and some thermal pad material that we can cut the size to replace what we take off. So now that we got that out of the way, we'll start by removing all the screws on the back plate. We don't have to worry about these four here. They hold the actual cooler portion here to the entire setup and are the mounting point around the GPU. So we'll take them out once we get the backplate off. Alright, so on this particular card there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 large screws, and there are 3 small screws that are here at the back. Alright, with all the screws removed, lift away the back plane, and as you can see there's dust and stuff that's collected. We'll clean that out before we put the card back together, but for now we can set it aside. Alright, now we've got these 4 screws that we need to take out that'll help us separate the PCB from the fan cooler itself, but we also have, well, if you can see, there's 2 screws right here at the top that also need to come out, that hold, provide support for the back plate or the I/O plate to the cooler. So we'll pop those 2 screws out. You don't have to worry about the standoffs for the video card for mounting video card cable. They don't interfere with removal, as I found out the first time I took one of these apart. Alright, so with those 2 screws out, we can now remove these 4 screws, but you want to be very careful. There are springs underneath them, and they could fly off and get lost. If they should be attached to the underside of this little adapter, but there's always the chance that it's not. So we'll carefully loosen all these in a bit of a star pattern so that we don't provide too much strain on any one. And then this one's still. Let me lift that off. And it might be hard to tell, but there are 4 little screws, springs attached to the screws that help hold that down. Alright, now that we've got that separated, let's see where it is. We can work on separating the cooler from the PCB, which is just a matter of gently prying and rocking it. You may need to use a little bit of a screwdriver to help gently pry. Depending on how old the thermal pads are and how much heat they've absorbed, they can stick a bit. Alright, now we want to be careful when we separate it, because up here at this top corner, as you can see, we have the fan cable, and we want to carefully disconnect that from the PCB. Give it a little bit of a gentle pry with the screwdriver. Alright. Now you'll probably see on the cooler itself the thermal pads that cover the VRAM, the memory modules, all that. This is a heatsink for the GPU itself, and it looks a bit dried out. So that could be causing the overheating issue. And of course here we've got the PCB, the GPUs there in the center, and we've got thermal pad residue stuck on all them. So now the next step is to clean off the thermal paste from the GPU itself and from the cooler, as well as get all the residue and that of the thermal pads off of both, get them all nice and clean and ready for the new. What I usually do is I'll take a paper towel and gently get the majority of it off. At least on the PCB, we can use it a little bit more on the cooler side itself, as there's nothing that's ESD sensitive that we're going to really shock and destroy on that. But we want to be very careful with the PCB that we don't shock it. That's why, as you can see, I'm working on my ESD mat. Alright, now the thermal pads, they just kind of peel up. They'll stick to your fingers and that, but you know, just kind of get a corner and kind of roll it. If you need to, you can use a screwdriver to help get a corner started, but some of them come off nice and easy, other ones don't, but we will clean up all the mess that's left over once we get them all off. What you can also do is grab a paper towel and kind of rub and make a mess. This one's down in a bit of a hole, so I'll use a screwdriver to start get it so we can get it out. Alright. Now you can use cotton swabs if you want, or I use alcohol wipes to help wipe. You'll probably use a whole bunch of alcohol wipes depending on the size you have. But what we want to do now is clean all the residue of the thermal pads off of everything, as well as get all the old thermal compound off of the GPU chip itself from around all the edges and all that. So we'll gently clean around the edges of the chip. And make sure we're gentle and we don't accidentally grab any resistors or transistors that may be sticking up and rip them off the board, because then you're going to have a bad day. Alright. And we'll clean the memory chips off. So these are small alcohol wipes. Okay, now that we got most of it cleaned off, we can take our can of air and any chunks of thermal paste and thermal pad that are left on there, we can, as well as dust, clean off. As you can see, we still got some residue on some of the chips. Well, you might not be able to see, but I can see. There's still, on these two chips, there's some residue. There's some residue left on some of the other ones. But for the most part, they are clean. Let's get rid of some of the garbage in the area. So I'll just take another alcohol wipe and see if I can get them any cleaner. Which doesn't look like I can. But that's fine. And then we'll set that off to the side. Now we'll work on cleaning all the residue off of this. This goes a lot easier because you don't have to be as gentle. Make sure you clean the copper heatsink. Make sure you have all the old thermal paste off of that so we may have a nice clean surface to make contact with. And again, once you have all that off, you can take your trusty can of air and get any chunks that may be left on. Okay. One other thing we're going to do while we've got it apart before we put new thermal paste on and new thermal pads is we're going to take the cover off the heatsink itself, so we've got access to the fins inside and the fan itself, and we will give that a cleaning to make sure that there's no dust and anything in there. So we'll need a trusty dusty handy dandy screwdriver, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 screws again that we will remove to get access to that. There are two different length screws. There are longer ones and then shorter ones. The shorter ones go here in the middle, and the longer ones are the ones that run all along the outside. Alright, and then you can just lift the top cover off. As you can see, we've got a good amount of dust built up on the fins here. The fan's pretty dirty, so Next job is to clean out all the dust, clean out the fins with a can of air. And then what I'm going to do is also clean out each of the individual fins with a cotton swab and some rubbing alcohol. I'll do that all off camera, and when we come back we'll have a nice clean graphics card cooler and we'll be ready to start the reassembly. Okay, now that I've got the cooler nice and clean, I've got the inside of the case nice and clean, we're ready to reassemble the cooler into the case and then fully reassemble the entire card. So it's basically the same as taking it apart. Make sure that the power cable is stuck up. We lower it into the plastic case and then we return all of our screws. I'll start with the longer ones and then we will put the shorter ones in, and we will be ready to fit and cut our thermal pads and get ready to reassemble the card fully. Okay, now the way that I did the pads on the last card was I put all the pads on this portion, so the pad here, each of the squares for the memory, and this one, and then I put the thermal paste on the CPU or GPU itself and mated the cards back together. So this is, let's see, what is this? This is a 200 by 200 by 2 millimeter highly efficient thermal pad that I got off of Amazon. I think it was $19. I don't exactly remember, but it's cuttable. As you can see, these strips are just wide enough for the chips. These are left over from the other card. So what we'll do is we'll cut these to size by roughly lining it up to get it in a position where I can cut, and giving it a cut. It's okay if they're a little bit big and overhang. You don't have to be perfect. And then what I'll do is I'll take the cut one, I'll line it up again, and that gives us 3. There's 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we need 3 more. What we'll do is again roughly line it up and then cut as straight as possible. It's 1, 2, we have 4, 5, say 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7, 8, and we will cut the fit, the one that goes in the little tray. Okay. And these do have a protective plastic on both sides of it to prevent it from losing its stickiness. Now we just need this little one there. Okay. So now that we've got all our thermal pads cut to size, we'll just go to sticking them into the places where they need to go. And at the moment I'm only pulling one side of the plastic off. That way I can still press down with my finger without it getting stuck. Alright. Now that they're in place, we can set this aside for the moment. We can take our PCB and we'll give it a quick look. Alright, everything looks good. Now we're ready for our thermal paste. I usually do a thin layer, bit of an X, like so. And then we need, we're ready to, well, first we need to take all the rest of this plastic off. Out, pulling the thermal pad up. If you don't pull the plastic off, you won't get the thermal transfer capabilities and your card will still run hot. Alright, now we're ready. So we'll line it up, we'll plug the power cable back in, and then we will just carefully set the card back down. We'll flip it over and we'll line up the four holes for the backing bracket, and then we will secure this down, securing it in a star pattern like you would for a CPU. Or at least that's how I do it. So we'll get one corner started. Get all four corners started, and then we'll work our way around, securing everything fully way back down. Alright, now with everybody nice and snug, we can take our back plate, which I didn't clean. We'll give it a quick wipe down. It's an alcohol wipe. We'll place our backing plate back on. Hang up our holes, and then it's a matter of returning all the screws to their rightful place. I'm just loosely putting them all into place, and then we will go around and tighten them all back down once they're all in place, and that will pull the PCB all the way back so all the thermal pads will be nicely squished up against the heatsink, and everything will be nice, tight, and secure. I've got our last 3 little ones. And we've got the 2 on the front faceplate. And there you go. That is a quick demonstration tutorial, I guess, of sorts, of how to disassemble an ATI Radeon HD 5870, clean off all the old thermal pads, reapply new pads, new paste, clean out the cooling fins on the inside, as this is a blower style GPU, and then reassemble the card. Next step after you do this is assemble it back into your machine, or if you have a test bench, plug it into there to make sure that card is functioning as you expect it to. And you should notice while it's running, you should have some reduced, it won't be completely cool, but it shouldn't be blowing as hot of air out as it was before you replaced all the thermal pads and thermal paste. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments if you want to see more tutorial videos on, disassembling graphics cards, doing what we did here today, or doing similar stuff on laptops, desktop computers. Let me know down in the comments as well. Always looking for ideas for new content for the channel. As I'm just starting to bring this channel up online, any feedback, input you guys may have on this video, please leave down in the comments anything you want to see in the future. I have a few ideas. Let me know down in the comments as well, and if I have the means or the stuff already procured here in my shop, I will definitely do a video on that for you guys. But until next time, I do hope you enjoyed this. And stay tuned for other videos. I've got a few other ones coming up. And be sure you subscribe and like the channel. That way when I post a new video, you'll be notified right away. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.